This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator. Welcome to The Speaking Show.
Hey, David, it's good to see you, my friend, and good to be back with you. Last time we saw each other was in New York City.
Yes, in 3D, in real life, IRL. IRL, as the young kids say. Totally great to see you. So you're a leadership guru. You're a facilitation guru. Give us a little bit of the backstory. How did Eddie Turner come to be doing what you're doing today? What was your professional journey that brought you to this? And then we'll talk about all kinds of other cool things that you're doing today.
Sure. Probably in a short snippet, I spent the first 20 years of my career in technology. I had the great fortune of spending 10 of those years at General Electric, and specifically in the capital division, the finance division, the real engine that accounted for 40% of the revenue of the entire organization. So I got a chance to see, as I call it, the best leading the best. When I went to school, there was not any business course, leadership course, communication course that didn't require me to read a Harvard Business Review or some kind of a study. And they always somehow went back to GE because GE was known as producing the best leaders, and especially Crotonville, where they would send us for learning. Either you went to Crotonville or we had local classes that had the Crotonville content. So I felt like I saw the best, leading the best, and that meant that I was taught by the best. But I was a technology geek. Fast forward, I had an opportunity to move into learning and talent development because a gentleman took me under his wing and taught me the business. And so that was the first time in 2009 where I combined both my technical skills and my newfound skills in this leadership space. And then I realized, really all those years as an IT guy, I somehow ended up from my very first role in the C-suite. So while I was coaching, I didn't look at it like that at the time. I was coaching C-level people on technology. I was really being prepared for what I do and I'm passionate about now, coaching them about leadership.
So talk about that transition, because I know that a lot of folks listening, they're either, like you and me, they have that corporate background, but unlike you and me, they might be just starting out, or they might just be in that corporate role now saying, hey, I saw this guy, Eddie Turner, at this convention, and I want to do what he's doing. I want to become a speaker, author, independent thought leader. What was that transition like? Because I know that when you have GE on your business card, some things are easier than when you don't have GE on your business card. So going from the gigantic corporate environment with the staff, the support, the centralized services, dude, they bought your pencils. I mean, come on.
No, you're right.
Going out to entrepreneurship, how did you make that transition?
You're right, David. In fact, when I was hired at GE, I have to admit, embarrassingly, I did not really realize who GE was. I knew about the light bulb company. The company made all the light bulbs in the house. I knew about the company made all the appliances in the house. But this whole financial services side, the fact that they were the biggest bank in America that wasn't really a bank, I didn't understand the gravity of that. So you're right. I started to realize how people reacted to me, because I worked for GE. Now, GE has since falling on hard times. Just an amazing expose in the Wall Street Journal about a month ago about how this great company that Edison built has really taken a turn that nobody would have thought would have happened. That being said, it's still one of the great companies in history. And to go from being an IT guy to doing leadership work, and I actually get this question probably once a week at least that you set up. Or somebody reaches out to me and says, I want to make a change. And how do you do it? How did you do it? And I can only share what my experience was, and that was going from being an IT guy, I felt like I was basically typecast. Because when I decided I'm going to try to work in the HR space, HR folks said, well, we want somebody who's done HR for the last 10 years, not IT. And when I did get that opportunity to work under my mentor for a year, I realized that obviously in IT, everything changes literally every 30 to 60 days. So a year being out of the business, I was now a dinosaur. And so the IT folks didn't want to deal with me anymore either. So I was kind of caught in the middle. So what I tell people is find out what your passion is. One of the quotes I put in my book is, it's beautiful when your avocation can be your vocation, right? So the avocation is your hobby or something you do for enjoyment. The vocation is what we typically do is our career. I was this passionate IT guy who, even though I was in IT, loved the people-facing roles because I love the soft skills. I love communication and I love working with leaders. And so I just stuck it out and grinded until I could get that role, get that opportunity. Now, to solidify myself, I sought credentials. In IT, I had every credential I needed to do my job. In the leadership space, my approach was to be no different. So I went and got certified as a coach. In fact, I hold 2 certifications in coaching. I went to Harvard and studied leadership under one of the preeminent authorities of leadership, Dr. Ronald Heifetz, the father of adaptive leadership. I took other opportunities to ingratiate myself in associations and take leadership roles. I did whatever it took to show that not only do I understand leadership conceptually, academically, but that I could execute as a leader practically through roles and through experiential experiences.
We could spend an hour just talking about what you just said, but we've got a lot of other good stuff to talk about, but I do want to spend a few more minutes on it. Namely, IT to leadership to getting the coaching certifications, etc. Before you had the coaching certifications, before you took on those leadership roles, I'm guessing there was a fair amount of imposter syndrome. I'm just an IT guy. I'm just, wherever we come from, right? I'm just a banking executive. What do I know about sales training? Yes, I've done some selling, but that wasn't my main thing. That wasn't what was on my business card. I'm pivoting into a new area. I'm a babe in the woods. In the early days, and I love that you just set yourself on this mission that I'm going to get certified. I'm going to study with the greats. I'm going to get all this experience under my belt. Before that was complete, though, what did you do to fight back that imposter syndrome or to strengthen your mindset against it, understanding that imposter syndrome is total BS anyway?
Interesting question, David. So it's interesting. So I will give you 2 answers to that. I will tell you that in some areas, I always felt confident in who I am and what my skill set is. But then there was the newer side that I did not have it. So here's the example. From a communication standpoint, my ability as an orator and a communicator, long before I discovered that speaking is a business through the National Speakers Association, I had been speaking publicly since I was 12 years old in different venues, primarily religious. And so I remember being at a big meeting back when I was working for Deloitte & Touche, and we were about to do a major launch. This was when Windows 95 had just been released. All the executives were going to be taught how to use a computer. Because when I entered the business world, shows my age a little bit here, Dave, executives didn't use computers. Everybody had their own administrative assistant, which we call secretaries then. And, it wasn't even like now, administrative assistant supports multiple executives. Then every executive had their own. They didn't use a computer. And we were going to teach each of them how to use a computer. They had made this major investment in Windows 95, the hot new operating system that come out, bought brand new computers. That Friday, I'm sitting in a meeting with our leader, our business leader, and she stooped. She's like, I don't know what we're going to do. The company who was going to deliver the training has pulled out on us. And she's like, I've got to figure out a solution. And I just simply stood up and said, I'll do it. Now, I was working there, David, and I was only 20 years old. And she looked at me. She thought I was kidding. I said, no, I will do it. She said, are you serious? She says, okay, meet me in my office in an hour. She wanted to see, could I do what I was talking about? And so no one knew that I was a teacher, that I could teach and instruct. And that really launched my career because I saved the day and I saved them thousands of dollars, probably more than that. They didn't give me any of it though, David, for some reason.
Strange,
because
right?
For my little paltry salary, they got the delivery that they did not get from the vendor who they were going to pay. But also there was that trusted advisor, if you will, because I was somebody who the executives have become comfortable with already anyway. So I delivered that, and that actually sprung my first business, Turner Technologies, where I became a consultant who taught courses and repaired machines and things for organizations. So that was the first part. So there was this piece where this is not my day job, but here's something I'm confident I can do, and didn't blink when the opportunity came. Now, fast forward a little bit later, when I moved into coaching, I did feel like an imposter initially. So even though I spent all these years around executives, even though I spent all these years in the professional circles, I knew how to conduct myself. I knew the rhythm of conversation, the rhythm of decorum. When it came to now being their executive coach, I did not feel ready. I did feel uncertain of myself. And I needed friends fellow coaches to remind me. And I'll say Robert Stack is one good person in the National Speakers Association who holds tons of credentials as a coach. I needed people like him that reminded me. Marshall Reynolds, who's also in our organization, both have the highest credentials in the coaching business to say, Eddie, you've got just as much experience as most of the coaches that have credentials higher than you. You just need the experience. You need more time. They will help me to appreciate my business experience is what many coaches lacked. They had the credential, they had the academics, but they didn't have that business side. So I needed them to remind me of my own limited thinking, my own limitations I was putting on myself. And their words of encouragement really helped me boost myself.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And it reminds me of one of my favorite internet memes. It's one of these little infographic, tweetables. There are enough forces working against you. Don't be one of them.
I love that. That is so true.
So it's like, oh, I can't do this and I'm not good enough and I'm not smart enough. No, wait a minute. Let's say that you are. And if a client says that, number one, they're wrong, but they're entitled to their opinion, right? You don't have to agree with them.
Absolutely. I agree. I like that.
I love that. Absolutely right. Hey, this interview is a real moneymaker. If you're serious about ramping up your reach and revenue as a speaker, trainer, or expert, book a confidential speaker strategy call with our team. The link is doitmarketing.com/call. It will be the most valuable 45 minutes you invest in your speaking-driven business. Speaking of value, let's get back to the show. All right, let's talk about the magic of facilitation, because I know that when you speak and when you present, this is a methodology near and dear to your heart. When you go inside of companies, one of the things that you do is to have a facilitated leadership methodology that you install with them so that there's more effective collaborative leadership and things get done and everyone's rowing in the same direction towards results. So tell us about the magic of facilitation. I think personally, let's give you a little quick label on this. I think it's the secret. It's the best kept secret in the speaking, training, consulting, performance improvement world. We hear that word facilitation. A lot of us don't even know what that is or what that means. So walk us through the ABCs of it, and then let's talk about how you use that in your leadership methodology.
Well, David, I've coined the phrase facilitate to educate, because I am absolutely convinced that whether we are working as a trainer or working as a speaker or a facilitator of a workshop event where we're leading people to conclusions or through strategy sessions, issue resolution, process mapping, in either of those three main contexts, we are more effective if we facilitate, meaning if we approach the room not as the expert who has all the answers, and we are going to let everyone listen to us extol whatever the knowledge is, the experience is, wisdom we may have, but rather consider that they are the experts in the room and then pull from each person in the room. And then we have a more collective base of knowledge to pull from. We have a more collective base of experiences. And quite frankly, when I gave my keynote at the winter conference for the National Speakers Association, I talked about the difference between andragogy and pedagogy. So the difference between man leading versus child leading. Those two words, when we look at the original Greek etymology, that's what they refer to. So the ideal is when we're teaching adults versus teaching children, adults have experiences that they want to share. They don't want to just be lectured to, right? Versus children, right? The pedagogical approach is that, right, child leading them to school where they will listen to the expert and they have no say-so. You do as you're told, you listen to them, and they have all the right answers. Adults will not sit very long and listen to that concept. So when we involve them from a keynote perspective through technology, through questions, through activities, exercises, it's more memorable. It's more engaging. And the same is true when it comes to delivering learning. And so I agree with you that facilitation is, to me, one of the best kept secrets in our industry, that those who facilitate are more memorable, more effective, and consequently get more bookings and earn more money.
Yeah, very interesting. That takes bravery. When we're not doing the constant stream of yakety, listen to me, idea, principle, concept, story, and you're leaving space, right? Part of facilitation is leaving space for your audience to engage in thought, to engage in reflection, to engage in dialogue, to engage in conversation with each other during your keynote. I think a lot of folks that are sort of stuck in that keynote model, they're like, Eddie, I only have 45 minutes. Eddie, I only have 60 minutes. I don't have time for facilitation from the big stage. I don't have time for them to turn to each other and ask each other about whatever. Let's bust that myth, because you know the truth, I know the truth, that if you have a short period of time, your impact will be increased with engagement and taking the time to include those facilitation components. It doesn't steal time, it increases impact. Talk about how that works.
Well, the famous words in our industry are less is more. We need look no further than TED Talks. The idea that someone could give something that is compelling, educational, and impactful in 18 minutes or less was unheard of until TED came around with that model. And now it has fundamentally turned our industry upside down. People are like, hey, if you can't say in 18 minutes or less, I don't want to hear it. And many of those 18-minute or less presentations have gone viral, millions of views. So I think that is object proof that it is not required that we speak 45 minutes to be effective. I think the reality is we're seeing is that people have a shorter attention span. And even if you're talking for 45 minutes, people are not retaining it, no matter how wonderful we are. When people go back and they talk about what we said at the water cooler, hopefully they remember what we said. Hopefully they remember us. They're only taking away one or two key points anyway. So can we make those one or two key points? The quote that's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, but I believe is really an ancient Chinese proverb is, tell me and I'll forget. Teach me, I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand. I believe it goes something like that. And so the ideal is when the audience is involved, they get more out of it. They will consequently understand and remember. The retention is increased versus just listening to us say it out loud. And so experiential learning is on the increase. There's more studies around that. It's not just anecdotal. There's empirical research that supports the idea that listening to us drone on and on is not necessarily going to produce more value.
And that is a huge message that a lot of people need to hear, that, our messages in whatever format, keynote, seminar, training, workshop, video, podcast, any of it, they're sold by weight, not by volume or by length, which brings us brilliantly, perfectly into your book, 140 Simple Messages to Guide Emerging Leaders, which is, of course, 140 messages, 140 characters used to be the old Twitter limitation before they jacked it up to whatever it is today, 280 something. How did that book come about, and how were you able to condense all of those Eddie-isms into 140 concise, tightly scripted messages? Was that a boiling down process, or are these pulled out of your keynotes and your facilitation and your client conversations, or where did these come from? Because I'll tell you, they're all great. They're all great. I have the book. I've read the book. It's awesome.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. So I literally was working on the book for facilitation, right? So the book facilitated collaboration. How to lead, influence, and facilitate and change everything. So that's the book that I was working on. It's a traditional book. And then when I was looking for the publisher, I was introduced to the publisher who had a different series of books that he uses. Mitchell is who I was introduced to, and he showed me his format. And I went, I'm not really sure that works for what I'm looking for. And then I thought about it. I said, wait a minute. When I'm coaching, I quote people a lot. And I'm quoting everybody who meant something to me. And I thought, how cool would it be for me to take all these people who've impacted me, put those together with a few of my own words, and share that for other people, especially for someone like me who's really a social media guy. This would be the perfect way for me to share those messages and get those messages out. So I decided to go ahead and use that. And so literally I went through all my old speeches and I went through a lot of the things that the book of quotes that I would keep whenever I heard quotes that I liked. I went through all those. And then I also just went through some of the old podcasts, things like this that I've done. And I started to write out all those quotes. And I kept ones that I thought were impactful. So it is truly to me an homage to those who I love, I care about, look up to. So great speakers of our organization are featured. Like I said, my family is featured. Maya Angelou, the great John Kennedy. So many people who we see in the public sector are there as well.
And this is for emerging leaders. And so, you've got the C-suite leaders and the VPs and the senior folks that you work with. Did you have to shift this a little bit to talk to the emerging leaders or kind of the rising leaders that might be at a kind of manager, supervisor, their first director type role? What was that shift like going from the top level leaders to the emerging leaders?
That's a good question, because I think simultaneously, while I was looking for the publisher for the book that I'm working on, it'll come out later this year, targeting September of 2019, and I was introduced to this format, I had also started coaching emerging leaders. So I think that factored into this as well. So I'm an executive coach who got the phenomenal opportunity to start to coach at Rice University. Rice University started what General Tom Kolditz, who runs the program, has called the most comprehensive leadership development program in the world. No other top university, or any university at all for that matter, is doing what Rice University is doing. And that is, they offer a leadership coach to every single student on campus. Everybody gives an executive coach to the MBA students, but no other university said, we're going to give it to every single student who wants it. So not only do we do coaching for these young people, but I also teach leadership workshops for the young folks there. And we also do team coaching. So there's 3 different ways that we're developing them as leaders. Primarily one-on-one coaching. They get an expert like myself, and there's about 30 of us there that do this, who are certified coaches with business experience who help them. So it's more than just having a mentor or having a professor or the guidance counselor work with you. You're getting an expert working with you one-on-one, something that most people don't get until they're 40 years old. So that was a part of it. So I had started working with them. I've now been doing that for 2 years, but I had started working with these emerging leaders who I say, give me hope for the future. Work with these young folks is just amazing. Starting as early as 18 years old. And many of them are international students. And so it's a really nice dynamic. Division I athletes. And then, of course, we have the MBAs in there and the PhD students in there as well. So from 18 years old, I'd say, to about 30, 35 years old, that's the group of folks that we're coaching. So working with these emerging leaders, I found it even more so. And when you're working with these folks, of course, they'll read a scholarly resource because they're in school. But most people, when they leave school, as you and I know, they will not pick up a book again. But everybody will read a tweet. So that's why I went with this model. It's something that's 280 characters or less, short, pithy, succinct, memorable, easy to share. And I jokingly said that only my mom and wife would read the book when I put it out. I now know that at least David has read the book and others. And so the response to the book has exceeded my wildest imaginations. I literally made it as a tool, and there's space in there for journaling. I made it as a tool for when I'm coaching. But emerging leaders, young people have found it great to have this collection of quotes that they can use. Some people have written me and told me that they just keep it open on their desk and they refer to a new one every day for motivation. So emerging leaders, a lot of it content is new for them, but I'd say for mid to senior executives, they know everything in there, and it's just a great reminder.
They know everything, but they might not be doing everything or living every principle the way that they would like to. So it's a fantastic reminder for some senior leaders as well. Super quick commercial break. Isn't this interview amazing? If you'd like to get more ideas on how to start or grow your speaking business fast, pop over to our free training at doitmarketing.com/webinar. I want to talk about social media, and I want to talk about marketing because they're related, obviously. But as you mentioned, you're a social media guy. A lot of speakers and experts and authors, they waste an awful lot of time on the wrong kind of social media, putting out the wrong kind of content, hoping to get results that they will never get. So what I always tell people, my soundbite that I'd love you to kind of riff off of, is if you're expecting a sales result out of a marketing activity, you're going to be sorely disappointed almost every time. So because you work with corporations and associations and business people say, oh, you got to be on Facebook, you got to be tweeting, you got to be on Pinterest, you got to be on Instagram, you got to be doing Facebook Lives all the time, you got to be doing your YouTube channel. How do you sort through the noise and say, listen, for my people, for my audience, for my folks that I want to reach and impact and serve, here are the 1 or 2 social media activities that I'm going to double down on because A, that's where they gather, and B, that's the type of information they want to consume. How do you make that decision for your business?
Another good question, David. And I keep saying that because you are asking me really good questions that make me think. I don't know that I have the silver bullet. I will tell you that I have experimented with a lot of things, and I'm still trying to figure out what is the right thing. I will give you an example. I made the decision to be on 4 platforms. My wife is the complete opposite of me. She's the antithesis. She does not believe in being on social media, so much so she closed all of her accounts except LinkedIn. And she actually views me being on social media as a waste of time, is what she calls it. And so we obviously clearly don't see eye to eye on that. But I decided that obviously LinkedIn is where the business people are. I decided that Twitter makes good sense from a marketing perspective. But the bigger question was, did it still make sense to be on Facebook? Did it make sense to be on Instagram? I chose to be on those 2 as well. Now, I will tell you something that happened about a month ago. I got an Instagram message from a CEO I worked for 10 years ago, right as I was making that transition from IT guy to learning and talent development. This was the first opportunity I had to do that. So I worked with him, supporting him. He sent me a note on Instagram and he says, Eddie, I want to know your secret. You are always happy. He said, I got on Instagram to watch my kids and you popped up. Tell me what your secret is. So I showed this to my wife. I said, you see what I'm talking about? I said, I went there because I thought this is where the emerging leaders are. This is where the young people are, my future audience. And so I started working on the Instagram feed. I said, I never would have imagined that a CEO would find me there. So to me, that was an amazing response or answer to why you should go to different areas and not just think, okay, it's only on LinkedIn. So I've since had a couple of more different interactions that have confirmed that Instagram was indeed the right place to be, especially with the strategy I took with the book. I knew specifically how I was going to bring that book to life. So I am on Instagram and I did create a Pinterest account purely for activating those things. So it's the right place to be. And then the message has to match. I will tell you that when it comes to videos, I have found that nobody watches the videos I take a lot of time to polish and produce, much to my dismay. But those videos that I make just off the cuff, that I'm just standing someplace and I just push one out for 2 minutes, they get thousands of views. And it's amazing how consistent that part has happened. I mean, 5,000 or 6,000 people watch these things.
And Eddie, that's on Instagram video or Facebook or where?
I create a video on my phone and upload it to all the platforms. So that's a good question. So I don't just make the Facebook video or the LinkedIn video or the Insta videos. I make the videos and push them across the platforms and then watch the metrics.
Right.
So some people would say that you should do it just like that. And this is your area. You should be giving me some advice on this. Some people say make the video on that because the platform handles the traffic different if you made it on their platform versus upload the video the way I'm doing. But I do it so that I have the one to feed the many.
Sure.
And so,
I mean, it's about efficiency and effectiveness, right? You don't want to be spending your life doing this. But and I love what you said about it. You're experimenting. I mean, we're always learning. We're always tweaking. We're always kind of seeing what gets traction. The mistake is I think people do it without a strategy or even without looking at the metrics, because you mentioned the magic M word. Yeah. I upload and I look at the metrics. And if the metrics say, you're probably going to stop doing it that way and try a different way.
John Doerr, who wrote a book, who funds the work that I do at Rice, he donated $50 million to create the Doerr Institute. And so that's what provides for the leadership coaching. He wrote a book that says, the title is Measure What Matters. And that was a different spin on what I used to always say that I learned, I believe, at NSA. You do what gets measured. What gets measured is what gets done.
Gets done, right.
Right? So it's really important to watch those things. So I would not have known to make the shift and stop spending all this time producing these other videos had I not been watching the numbers. I think the other thing for me, the reason why I create the video, then push it across all 4, is because if I tried to record that 4 times, the authenticity would be lost.
Right, for sure.
I just started up, one take, do that recording. That's it. I don't redo it. That authenticity, the stutters or whatever words that didn't come out the way I wanted, that seems to be what people like far better.
For sure.
Than
oh my God. Video. Nothing gets more traction in my world. Nothing gets more traction than when I have some kind of tech disaster, either on a webinar or a Facebook Live. I was like, well, that just blew up. Okay. Clearly that didn't work. And, it's self-deprecating. I think it also humanizes us.
Yeah.
So last couple quick questions. Marketing and outreach and connecting with prospects and buyers. Do you primarily work with associations and that leads to the corporate work, or do you market direct to the corporate folks also?
I do a little bit of everything. I
So
think
what
that
have you found effective? Is it about phone, email, LinkedIn? Give us a couple of your favorite door opening strategies to get an initial conversation going when you invite someone to a conversation about how you might help them.
I'm old fashioned, and maybe this isn't the best, but to me, nothing replaces pressing the flesh. So getting out there at association meetings, getting out there at networking events in town. I subscribe to the business journal of my city. And when there are events, I make sure I go to those events. And at those events, I meet people, and those meetings of face to face create the opportunities. Now, of course, you're not going to always close the first time. Sometimes people have to see you at events over and over, and then you build up an affinity, build up a relationship, and then those things convert later. But certainly being out there, not being the best kept secret, as Tim Durkin would say, to me is the best strategy.
And do you find, as far as the national work, do you like having sort of a local base and then going national when you're invited, or do you also market nationally with some intention?
So people find me through different resources. So, for example, just got a call a couple of weeks ago to do a speech in New York City. Now, I happen to belong to the New York City speaking chapter as well as the New York City coaching chapter, but this person did not find me through either of those databases. She found me through LinkedIn. She typed in a couple of keywords and I popped up. So through being listed in the appropriate places, I enjoy being connected like that. I do a lot of work through relationships where folks put me on contracts at places where it's not my client, it's their client, but I go in representing them. And so I enjoy doing that as well.
So it's kind of a nice mix that you're just, it sounds to me like, and this is what I preach all the time, and I wish all you darn people were listening right now. One of my principles, Eddie, is that marketing should be easy, effortless, and enjoyable for you based on your preferences, what you like to do. And I love what you said. You say, you know what? I love pressing the flesh. I love networking. I love meeting people face to face. And what I say is, listen, if you love technology, use technology strategies. You love to write, use writing strategies. You love to speak, use speaking strategies. Do showcase speaking, do a podcast, do video. Those are all speaking strategies. If you love face-to-face and you love networking and walking into a room and meeting a whole bunch of new people, do that. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but if you do it the way you're doing it, marketing becomes, number one, a lot more fun and a lot more organic because you're playing to your strengths anyway.
No question about it. I concur with you 100%. I don't do the things that I don't enjoy. So, certain things are laborious. I try to blog. I think I have maybe 4 articles up there,
Right.
and, I don't necessarily enjoy writing organically. I push myself. And so even with the books, that's the first book was easier. It still took me 6 months, but it still was a little bit easier process. But yeah. And, so I don't subscribe to the idea that you have to have all the channels filled, but certainly the ones that you're good at, that you enjoy, because those are the ones that will be sustainable.
Totally spot on. All right, 2 final questions. My final question that I'll ask at the end is, how can people get connected and stay connected to you online, offline, all your fabulous books, resources, etc., your 4-entry blog, because they have to get it, on that. But my second to last question is, if people were to take one key idea from our fantastic conversation today, what would you hope that would be?
So let me answer the first question. The first question is, you can find me at eddieturnerllc.com or type Eddie Turner Jr. into your any search engine, and that will usually be the first result that comes back. If you type just Eddie Turner into a search engine, then you get the famous guitar player first, and I'm usually second or third. Eddie Turner Jr. always brings up all my body of work. So you'll find my Instagrams, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, as well as my Amazon author page. You find all that through that listing. The biggest thing I would say I want people to walk away thinking about is to do what you are passionate about doing. Do what works for you. There's always someone that tells us this is the way, that is the way, do this, do that. Do what you like, do what you're passionate about. And I believe that everything else falls in line.
Wise words. We're just going to stick the landing right on that puppy. Thank you, my friend. You are awesome. We have to have you back. Like when the new book comes out, you're totally coming back. We'll talk about facilitated leadership and all of those great things. And this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, David.
Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.